everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. I'm Ty Glenn. Hopefully you guys are having a great Friday. Got lots of NHL news to cover, so make sure that you stay tuned in to this episode until the end. Before we go ahead and get started, just a quick reminder, hit that like and subscribe button if you're watching the podcast on YouTube, and if you're listening to audio platform, make sure that you are following the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. We are with you guys every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So you want to make sure that you are staying up to date on the latest episodes of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast, number one podcast for all things hockey. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started into the NHL news for today. So there's only going to be one game for Wednesday that I'm going to be talking about, despite there being 3-4 games on the slate for Wednesday, and that is the Dallas Stars and Colorado Avalanche Game 3 game. And the reason why is because the big storyline of that game was Gabriel Landeskog returning to the lineup. This was his first game back with the team since Game 6 of the 2022 Stanley Cup Final. Of course, it was a 2-1 win for the Colorado Avalanche over the Tampa Bay Lightning. They won the Stanley Cup that year. And it's been 1,032 days since he was last out. So it's kind of impressive. So I'm pretty sure the journey has been unreal for Gabriel Landeskog. It took a lot of time. He took a lot of recovering. And yes, but it's nice to see him back with the Colorado Avalanche. He returned to the Colorado Avalanche lineup after undergoing a knee cartilage transplant surgery. So, like I said, the journey has been unreal for Gabriel Landeskog. I'm pretty sure Avalanche fans was ecstatic, and the arena erupted when Gabriel Landeskog was back in the lineup for the Colorado Avalanche. And take a look at his stats in his first game back with the team. He had 13 minutes and 16 seconds of ice time and led the team with 6 hits, including a hit on his former Colorado Avalanche teammate, Mikko Rantanen. So I'm pretty sure kind of had to feel good for Gabriel Landeskog, getting a hit on your former teammate. Of course, Mikko Rantanen played 10 seasons with the Colorado Avalanche before he was traded to Carolina. So he's been with the Avalanche for a while, and it's nice to see Gabriel Landeskog respond to his former teammate with a huge hit. That ended up being the first hit for Gabriel Landeskog of this game. And Gabriel Landeskog also said that the night was a quote-unquote very special night, regardless of the outcome. Of course, the Colorado Avalanche lost 2-1 in this game to the Dallas Stars in overtime, and the Stars lead the series 2-1. But like Gabriel Landeskog said, special night for him, special night for the Colorado Avalanche despite the loss. And fun fact, Gabriel Landeskog became the 5th player in NHL history with at least 700 games played to return after missing 1,000 or more days with the team. Of course, players like Sid Abel missed 1,000 plus games with the Detroit Red Wings. Of course, he was team captain of the Red Wings at the time, and he went to serve in World War II. But take a look at this game in general. Valery Nichushkin, he scored Colorado's only goal of the game, coming in at 8 minutes and 9 seconds of the first period. Scored from the slot and pushed the puck past Jake Oettinger. And Mackenzie Blackwood made 26 saves in the overtime loss. And for the Dallas Stars, Tyler Seguin, he was the hero in overtime, scored the overtime game winner. Of course, former Colorado Avalanche Mikko Rantanen, and then Mason Marchment picked up the assists for the overtime game winner. Second straight overtime win for Dallas. They had a 4-3 overtime win in Game 2. Jamie Benn, he had the game tying goal in the third period to send this game to overtime. And Jake Oettinger, he made 27 saves in the win. And Game 4 is this Saturday, tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. This will air on TBS, True TV, and HBO Max for you to watch. But before we get into Thursday's games on the slate from yesterday, big news coming out of New York from the Rangers. So the general manager and president, Chris Drury, agrees to terms on a multi-year contract extension. Of course, he will continue holding his role as president and general manager of the New York Rangers, a role that he has held since May of 2021. And Executive Chairman James Dolan, he expressed confidence in Drury's leadership and cited his passion and relentless work ethic despite the team's recent playoff miss. And this is what he said, and I quote, "I am pleased that Chris will continue to lead the Rangers hockey operations in his role as president and general manager. Over his tenure, Chris has shown passion for the Rangers, relentless work ethic, and a tireless pursuit of excellence. While we are all disappointed in what transpired this past season, I am confident in his ability to guide this organization to success." And under Drury's tenure with the New York Rangers, the Rangers have achieved a 193, 105, 30 regular season record over his 4 seasons with the team. Like I said, he's been with the team since May of 2021, which marks the most wins in any 4-year span in franchise history. And of course, the Rangers have went all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals twice during his time with the New York Rangers, in 2022, which was a loss to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and most recently being last year in the Eastern Conference Final, which was a loss to the eventual Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. And they played 43 playoff games, winning only 23 of those games during Chris Drury's first 3 seasons. And of course, the Rangers, after winning the President's Trophy last season, they missed out on the playoffs for the first time since the 2020-21 season, finishing 6 points out of the final Eastern Conference wildcard spot. They had a 39, 36, and 7 record with 85 points, 5th place in the Metropolitan Division, and then, like I said before, they were 6 points out of a playoff spot. And when they won the President's Trophy last season, they had a 55, 23, and 4 record with 114 points, and they set the franchise record with 55 wins and 114 points. So it's kind of crazy. And this is the second time that this has happened in Rangers franchise history, by the way. So it's crazy that they went from all the way to being the best team in the league, because as you don't know, the President's Trophy goes out to the best team in the league. So it's kind of crazy that they went from being the best President's Trophy team in the league to going downhill and missing the Stanley Cup playoffs. And of course, not only did the Rangers extend Chris Drury to a multi-year contract extension, but they also fired their head coach, Pete Laviolette. You remember from Wednesday's episode of Hockey Talk TG Podcast, where I discussed more about that. So Rangers are still a team that is in the coaching search. Of course, you got other teams like the Blackhawks, Bruins, Flyers, Kraken, Ducks, all those teams in coaching search. So it will be interesting to see how this will play out for the New York Rangers in the off season. But moving on to Thursday's games on the slate. So there's only 4 games on the slate for Thursday, and we're going to be starting with the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning in Game 2 of their first round series. So Sergei Bobrovsky, he had an outstanding performance, making 19 saves in the Panthers' 2-0 shutout win over the Tampa Bay Lightning in Game 2. 4th career playoff shutout for Sergei Bobrovsky, and first since Game 1 of the 2024 Stanley Cup Finals against the Edmonton Oilers. And the Panthers lead their best-of-7 series against the division and arch rivals Tampa Bay Lightning 2-0. And Nate Schmidt, he scored once again. This his 3rd goal in 2 games. He scored 2 goals in Game 1, the Panthers' 6-2 win over the Lightning. He scores another one here in Game 2 in the shutout win over the Tampa Bay Lightning, and he becomes the 6th defenseman in NHL history to achieve this feat at the start of the postseason. He scored 4 minutes and 15 seconds into the first period, which of course was a face-off win for the Florida Panthers, and Nate Schmidt one-timed that one, I believe it was from the point, and got the Panthers on the board early. Sam Bennett, he scored an empty netter with 3 seconds left to go in the 3rd period to seal the deal. And for the Tampa Bay Lightning, it was a tough one for them, losing their first 2 games at home. They went 0 for 5 on the power play, managing only 2 shots on goal during their man advantage opportunities, which is kind of crazy because the Lightning's power play was 5th in the league in the regular season at 25.9%. Of course, you round that would be 26% right there. So, and their power play absolutely stacked. They could not get anything going against the Florida Panthers. But at the same time, it kind of makes sense because the Panthers had one of the top 10 penalty kills in the league, ranking 10th in the league in the regular season at 80.7%. Of course, you round that would be 81%. So the Panthers won the top 10 penalty kills in the league. Lightning won the top 5 power plays in the league. And like I said before the series started, this could go either way. So don't count the temp. I did pick the Florida Panthers to win this series in 7 games. But like I said, it can go either way. So even though I chose the Panthers to win this series, I'm not going to count the Tampa Bay Lightning out just yet because they could easily just win both games 3 and games 4 on the road, just like the Panthers did to them. They won games 1 and game 2 in their home barn. They can go to South Florida and easily win games 3 and games 4 against the Panthers. So like I said, I can see the series go to 7 games. I still have the Panthers winning, but like I said, it can go either way. A few of my friends had the Tampa Bay Lightning winning over the Florida Panthers, so couldn't get mad at them. So it's like 50-50 in this scenario. And fun fact, this won't be a fun fact if you're a Tampa Bay Lightning fan, but Nikita Kucherov extended his playoff goal drought to 12 games, including the last 7 meetings against the Florida Panthers. So we have yet to see a playoff goal from Nikita Kucherov. Of course, it's kind of funny how the Tampa Bay Lightning and Florida Panthers have been representing hockey in Florida going to the Stanley Cup Finals for the past four seasons. So, of course, Lightning made the Stanley Cup Final in 2020, 2021, 2022. Panthers made the Stanley Cup Final in 2023 and 2024. So, usually hockey is not well known for its warm weather and really not well known in Florida, but Florida, of course, the teams are making the Stanley Cup Finals. So, it's actually kind of crazy when you think about it. Panthers captain Alexander Barkov left the game with 10 minutes and 9 seconds left to go in the third period after a hit from behind from Lightning for Brandon Hagel. He did not return. Brandon Hagel received a 5-minute major for their hit, and Lightning, they successfully killed off the penalty. So Alexander Barkov obviously questionable for Game 3 of this series, which will be tomorrow at 12 o'clock p.m. Central Time. This will air on TBS, True TV, and HBO Max. Obviously, bad news to see if you're a Florida Panthers fan. You want to have your captain in the lineup, but we'll just have to see if he'll be in the lineup for Game 3. Most likely, he will not be because that hit from Brandon Hagel, obviously a dirty hit right there. So, most likely not going to return for Game 3. But moving on from the Battle of Florida to the Battle of Ontario, Toronto Maple Leafs, Ottawa Senators, Game 3. Simone Bennett scores the overtime game-winning goal to give the Leafs a 3-2 overtime win over the Ottawa Senators. Scored a minute and 19 seconds into overtime. Clean face-off win by Austin Matthews, and Simone Bennett with an absolute laser from the point. And he puts it past Linus Ullmark for the overtime game winner. Simon calls game. And the Toronto Maple Leafs lead this best of 7 series 3-0. Now, I said off air that is it too early to say that the Leafs will sweep the series against the Ottawa Senators. Because for me, having the Senators win this series in 7 games, I don't know. But a lot of guys on this Ottawa Senators team has unexperienced playoffs. So this is their first time being in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and they're unexperienced. But knowing the Toronto Maple Leafs, they could most likely choke this playoff series. Seems like no matter what they do, yes, I know they have the superstars and Austin Matthews, William Nylander, Matthew Nyes, Mitch Marner, and then they got a good head coach in Craig Berube who led the Blues to the Stanley Cup of 2019. It seems like no matter what they do, they always choke the playoffs. Think back to 2021, and of course, most of those guys on that Canadiens roster then had playoff experience. Think back to 2021 when they were facing the Montreal Canadiens. And like I said, most of them have playoff experience. Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, Juraj Slavkovsky. This was their first time being in the Stanley Cup playoffs, though. But most of those guys in the Canadiens have playoff experience. But in 2021, Maple Leafs had a 3-1 series lead against the Montreal Canadiens. And then they choked the series lead and lost in 7 games. I'm not saying that this could be the same way for the Ottawa Senators, but who knows? That's what I like about playoff hockey. It's unpredictable. You never know what can happen. And maybe the Senators get back in this game. Maybe they win the next 4 straight games and they eliminate the Toronto Maple Leafs in 7 games. Who knows? Or this could be a clean sweep. All I'm asking is it too early to say the Leafs will complete the sweep against the Senators? I'm not sure, but we will just have to see how this will go. But if you guys think that it's too early for them to say that this will be a sweep, just let me know down in the comments. But anyway, Matthew Nyes and Austin Matthews also scored for Toronto in this win. Both goals obviously coming in regulation. Matthew Nyes scored on the power play in the second period to tie the game up at 1, and Austin Matthews scored 32 seconds in the third period to give him a 2-1 lead before Brady Tkachuk tied the game up at 2. Of course, Mitch Marner had both assists on the goals, including a behind-the-net feed to Austin Matthews, which I thought was pretty impressive. What a play from my boy Mitch Marner. Excuse me. Sorry for that. Bumped my head into the mic if you're watching that on YouTube. And Anthony Stolarz, he made 18 saves in net, so he had a solid performance for the Toronto Maple Leafs and for the Ottawa Senators. Claude Giroux, Brady Tkachuk scored for Ottawa. Of course, Giroux scored the first goal of the game. 1 minute and 38 seconds in the second period on a 5-on-3 power play to make it 1-0 Ottawa. And this is actually the Senators' first lead of the series. Of course, they did not score in games 1 and games 2, so this was their first lead of this series for them. And Brady Tkachuk tied the game up at 2 in the third period with a wrist shot from above the left circle, using one of the Toronto defenders as a screen. Great shot from Brady Tkachuk, and he was fired up after that goal, and so was the Senators crowd. And usually at Ottawa Senators games, it's usually a lot of usually when the Maple Leafs play the Senators, it's usually a lot of Maple Leafs fans than there is Senators fans. But of course, it's playoff hockey, so it's probably going to most likely be mostly Senators fans instead of Maple Leafs fans. But throughout the regular season, when I watch these two teams play, it's mostly Maple Leafs fans that's at the Senators games than it is with Senators fans. So that's what I kind of find really interesting. And Linus Ullmark, he made 17 saves in net to keep the Ottawa Senators in this game and not letting it be a blowout game like it was in Game 1. But Game 4 is tomorrow at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. This will air on TBS, True TV, and HBO Max. ESPN aired the first 3 games. Now it is time for TBS to air one of these games, and this will be interesting. Could the Leafs sweep the series, or will the Senators force a Game 5? I don't know, but knowing the Toronto Maple Leafs, they always mainly because they did advance past the first round in 2023 against the Tampa Bay Lightning, but I don't know if this will be another playoff choke for the Toronto Maple Leafs, or could they actually get it done? But moving on to the Golden Knights and Wild game. So Kirill Kaprizov, he scored 2 goals in the Minnesota Wild's 5-2 win over the Vegas Golden Knights in Game 3 Thursday. He scored twice on the power play, one a little early into the first period, and then he scored at the buzzer beater in the second period. And this is his second straight game that he's had 2 goals. He had 2 goals in Game 2 in the Wild's 5-2 win over the Vegas Golden Knights. And Minnesota leads this best-of-7 series 2-1. And Marco Rossi netted his first career postseason goal at 6 minutes and 51 seconds of the first period, capitalizing on a Golden Knights turnover behind the Vegas net. Matt Boldy scored for the Wild in his third straight game, again off of a Vegas turnover and roofing the puck top shelf past Adin Hill. And Zeev Buium recorded his first career playoff point with an assist on Kirill Kaprizov's opening goal. And Philip Gustafson made 30 saves in the win for the Wild. And for the Golden Knights, Alex Pietrangelo, Riley Smith scored for Vegas. Of course, Riley Smith goals coming short-handed in the third period, and Adin Hill was pulled from this game, allowed 4 goals and 21 shots faced the net, and he was replaced by Kirill Smith, who made 9 saves in relief in the third period. So it seems like these last 2 games for the Golden Knights, Game 2 and Game 3, it's mostly been the turnovers for them, and that is something that they are going to have to fix throughout the series, especially for a guy that picked Vegas to win it all in the Stanley Cup. I picked Vegas because I thought they had a much better roster, and nobody was really talking about Vegas winning the Stanley Cup. So I was like, you know what? I like Vegas' roster. Nobody's really talking about Vegas as being one of the Cup contenders, so why not me pick Vegas? You know, that's probably a stupid decision for me, but like I said, nobody was really discussing about Vegas. I like their roster, but I don't know. The main thing has been the turnovers, particularly by Golden Knights defenseman Shea Theodore. She looked back to Game 2. He had a few turnovers in this game. Golden Knights are going to have to fix that come Game 4. Game 4 is Saturday at 3 o'clock p.m. Central Time. It will air on TBS, True TV, HBO Max. Could Adin Hill get the start in Game 4, or could it be a Kirill Smith? I don't know, but based off of these last 2 games, I would have to imagine that it will be a Kirill Smith getting the start in Game 4 just to change it up and see what happens then. We'll see if the Golden Knights can even up the series at 2 games apiece, heading back home to Vegas for Game 5, but we'll just have to see what the outcome will be in Game 4, because obviously it should go down 3-1 in the series, especially to a team like the Minnesota Wild, who had to claw their way into a playoff spot during the final few weeks of the regular season. It's basically game over for Vegas. You're not coming back down. You're not coming back in the series as you go down 3-1 to a Minnesota Wild team who had to earn their way into the playoff spot, and the Golden Knights being the Pacific Division champions and all. But moving on to the Winnipeg Jets and St. Louis Blues. So Blues had a statement win over the Winnipeg Jets. They had a 7-2 blowout win over the Winnipeg Jets. Pavel Buchnevich nets his first career playoff hat trick in the win. He also had an assist for a 4-point night. And because of the Blues' 7-2 win over the Jets now lead this series 2-1. And Cam Fowler, what a night Cam Fowler had. You think Pavel Buchnevich had a great night. Cam Fowler says, hold my beer. He gets a 5-point night game. He gets 5 points in this game, 1 goal, 4 assists for a 5-point night. And fun fact about this, Cam Fowler sets the franchise record with his 5 points. Cam Fowler sets a franchise record for most points by Blues defensemen in a playoff game. That is crazy to think about, because Cam Fowler has played the majority of his NHL career with the Anaheim Ducks. He was traded to the Blues this season, and he enters his name in the Blues franchise record books for having most points by a Blues defenseman in a playoff game. That's actually kind of crazy. And not to mention, he played this 1,000 career game at the Winter Classic with the St. Louis Blues. And also, fun fact about this, Cam Fowler is the 8th defenseman in league history to get 5 or more points in a playoff game. So, another fun fact to think about for Cam Fowler, the veteran, obviously had a great night for St. Louis. And we'll see what happens in Game 4. Jordan Kyrou, Alex Porkenko, hopefully I pronounced that name right. I probably didn't. And Colton Parayko also scored for St. Louis. And Jordan Binnington made 16 saves in the win. Of course, Jordan Kyrou and Jordan Binnington I had on my fantasy hockey team this season. I'm hopefully look to add them back on my fantasy hockey team if nobody else takes them. But for the Winnipeg Jets, David Gustafson and Neil Panik scored for Winnipeg, and Connor Hellebuck pulled in this game, allowed 6 goals on 25 shots faced in net, and he was replaced by Eric Comrie, who made 2 saves in relief. And usually for a guy like Connor Hellebuyck, a guy who had most wins in the season, he had a stellar season for the Winnipeg Jets, going to be a candidate for the Vezina Trophy. It seems like he's always a candidate for the Vezina Trophy, in my opinion, followed by somebody like Sergei Bobrovsky or Andrei Vasilevsky being the other candidates. But this was a bad night for Connor Hellebuyck. Obviously not the night that he wanted to have, but we'll see if he can rebound in Game 4 on Sunday, which will come on at 12 o'clock p.m. Central Time on TBS, True TV, and HBO Max. Alright, Stanley Cup playoff games on the slate. So there's only 3 Stanley Cup playoff games on the slate, all being Game 3s for this one. Starting with Game 3 of the Washington Capitals and Montreal Canadiens at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. This will air on TNT, True TV, and HBO Max, and the Capitals lead this best-of-7 series 2-0. And I said this off air, going to Bell Center for a playoff game, it's got to be the best feeling for a hockey fan. You saw how they were loud in the Four Nations, where they had the Four Nations at the Bell Center. You saw how loud the fans were. The atmosphere, it was absolutely electrifying. And even when Ivan Demidov made his NHL debut against my Chicago Blackhawks, they just absolutely blew the roof off of that place. And as a Blackhawks fan, seeing us play our second to last game against the Canadiens while Ivan Demidov making his NHL debut, it actually felt like a playoff game for us. So, obviously, Bell Center, the number one place that you can go to watching the playoff game. I have to say that as a Blackhawks fan, and I can't wait for this game tonight against the Capitals at Bell Center. This will probably be the only game I probably might watch, to be honest, from this 3-game slate. Because, like I said, going to Bell Center, watching a playoff game, best feeling for a hockey fan. And I have to say that as a Blackhawks fan. Obviously, you guys probably would expect me to say United Center is the best place to go to for a playoff game, but no, I have to go to Bell Center. I mean, those fans are obviously going to be unreal and loud on their feet come Game 3 tonight. And then we got Game 3 of the Carolina Hurricanes and New Jersey Devils at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time. This will air on TBS and HBO Max, and the Hurricanes lead this best-of-7 series 2-0. Obviously, the Devils are going to have a statement game tonight if they still want to be in this series. Obviously, the injury issues to Luke Hughes, Brennan Dillon, Jack Hughes, Cody Glass going down with injury. That's obviously a huge effect on the Devils team, but we'll see if they can come back and get back in the series for the Game 3 win tonight. Highly unlikely against Carolina Hurricanes team, but we'll just have to see what will happen in Game 3. And then we got Game 3 of the LA Kings and Edmonton Oilers at 9 o'clock p.m. Central Time. This will air on TNT, True TV, and HBO Max. And the Kings lead this best-of-7 series 2-0. If you watched my bold predictions video before the start of the 2024-25 NHL season, you would know that I had the Edmonton Oilers winning the Stanley Cup. I don't think that's going to be the case now. I think I want to still stick with Vegas, but the thing about them is their turnovers and their lack of generated scoring chances from their past 2 games. Game 1, obviously a 4-2 win from Vegas, but Games 2 and Game 3 have mainly been turnovers, and they'll not generate any high-scoring chances. So, I don't know. But anything can go in the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's what I like about playoff hockey. Anything can go in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But Oilers were my first pick at winning the Stanley Cup this season. I don't think that's going to happen. It could go to another team this season. Some people are even saying that we can have an all-Canadian Stanley Cup Final. But we'll just have to see how everything goes. But yeah, all Game 3s tonight, all coming on. 2 of them coming on TNT and True TV. And, of course, Hurricanes and Devils coming on TBS. But all 3 of these games will be on HBO Max as well. So, it's going to be a great night for playoff hockey. Once again, all Game 3s in action. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. Really do appreciate it. Like I said, make sure you're following Hockey Talk TG Podcast on all of your podcast streaming platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. And yeah, hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day. Hopefully you have a great weekend. Keep God first as always. Be blessed. I'll see you guys Monday for another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG Podcast. Take care.